James H. Fallon was born in 1947 to an Italian-American family as one of 6 children. He was a neuroscientist and worked as a professor of psychiatry and human behavior at the University of California, Irvine School of Medicine. His research interests included brain function and imaging. Fallon studied the brain scans of convicted serial killers. The scans revealed low levels of activity in areas of the brain that are associated with empathy and morality, something that's correlated to psychopathy. After completing his investigation of the homicidal brain, Jim began analyzing a very different set of scans. He had convinced 10 members of his close family to submit to a PET scan and blood test as part of a project to determine if they were predisposed to Alzheimer's. It was then that he noticed something odd. The family scans were normal, typical healthy brain images, except for the last one in the pile. And it looked just like the scans of the psychopaths from the other study. The image suggested that an individual, the person in his family, an immediate family member, was a psychopath. This, of course, was deeply concerning to Jim, so he asked a lab technician to unblind the study and tell him whose brain it belonged to. You can imagine his shock in finding out that the scan was of his brain. Immediately, he began reflecting on his personality traits and habits, and he really thought that he never emotionally felt fully connected to his wife. And even after that, after his children were born, he would go out and party. He'd occasionally blow off work meetings to go to the bar and flirt with women, and really didn't invest deeply in relationships. So this is how Jim initially learned that he shared so much in common with psychopaths. And I say initially because in addition to the brain scans, Jim then turned to blood samples that he had collected. He looked at 12 genes related to aggression and violence. And he zeroed in on what's called the warrior gene, a gene that regulates serotonin in the brain and affects our mood. Everyone in Jim's family had the low aggression variant of that warrior gene, except for Jim. In a 2010 NPR story, Jim said, "In a sense, I'm a born killer." Jim realized that in addition to this disconnection from family, that he sometimes did things that put others in danger. Like the time he took his brother to a Kenyan cave known to be a reservoir for the Marburg virus, just because he wanted to see it. Jim realized that deeply emotional events like deaths and injuries that anguished other people left him dry-eyed. And Jim described himself as living in an emotional flatland. Jim realized something was different about him. Something was off. So after learning about his brain scan and genetics and feeling deeply troubled, Jim decided to resist his psychopathic tendencies and become a better person. He began by asking himself, what would a good guy do? And then he started performing the routine of a good guy. He did the dishes, complimented his wife, spent more time with his children, and attended the obligatory family functions, but with a heightened level of Menschlichkeit. For Jim, being good was exhausting. So much so that he began sleeping longer at night. After a few months, Jim's wife said, "What's come over you? You're really, really nice." Jim told her not to take it too seriously, that he was just playing a game. "I don't care if you mean it or not," Jim's wife said. "Keep doing it." Jim couldn't seem to resolve whether by acting less psychopathically, if he was actually being less of a psychopath. But Jim recognized that if he didn't try to remember to be a good person, he'd slip back into his old ways. For Jim's family, all that mattered was that he became kinder, gentler, and more thoughtful. Today, as we gather on Yom Kippur, the most solemn, reflective, and transformative day of the year, we reflect on how we've erred and missed the mark. The essence of this day is making atonement for the way we've hurt others, neglected ourselves, and failed to be our best selves. This day is about who we want to be, aspire to be, commit to being. And so I ask you to consider this deceptively simple question. Can people really change? Not just our habits, not just our actions, but our very personalities. The way we think, the way we feel, the way we react when life tests us. Can we really change who we are? Can we change our personality? Olga Kazan, staff writer at The Atlantic and author of the book Me But Better, says yes, we can absolutely change our personality. Olga hated her personality. She struggled with debilitating introversion, neuroticism, and anger, and chronicles her path through a year of intentional work to change her personality. Over the course of the year, Olga said yes to experiences she would normally avoid. She enrolled in an improv class to push her socially to become more spontaneous. She signed up for sailing, surfing, and a sensory deprivation tank to be more open to new experiences outside her comfort zone. She journaled regularly, focusing on gratitude to help shift her mindset to the positive instead of dwelling on the negative. And she meditated to help bring more calm and peace to her mind and to reduce anxiety. All of those practices pushed Olga to act in new ways. And bit by bit, according to the measure of repeated personality tests, Olga changed her personality. She not only acted differently, but she thought and felt differently. Data tells us that with the right intervention, introverts can become extroverts, sloppy people can be neater, slackers can gain ambition, and anxious people can learn to be calm. Personality psychologist Brent Roberts says that personality is what you do habitually, automatically, without even thinking about it, whether it's how you think about things, how you feel, or whether you do certain things. Roberts likens personality to a tapestry, an intricate composition in which every stitch matters, but pulling just one thread won't unravel the entire creation. Your friends, your job, your marriage, your hometown, and all your genes that shape your personality, but it's not the result of any one thing alone. Personality is our characteristic way of thinking, feeling, and behaving. It's how you think about your behavior and how you act. Trait theory suggests that our personalities consist of 5 core traits. These are our habitual patterns, our thoughts and emotions, and that they remain relatively stable over time. Those traits are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And sometimes they're referred to by the acronym OCEAN. Among personality change skeptics was an early American psychologist, William James, who published The Principles of Psychology, and he wrote, "Habit is the enormous flywheel of society. It keeps the fisherman and the deckhand at sea through the winter and holds the miner in his darkness." James wrote, in most of us, by the age of 30, character is set like plaster and will never soften again. To James, personality didn't change, it calcified. But we know from our lived experience that our personalities do change as we age. A study measuring the personalities of high school students in the 1960s found that 98% of participants had changed at least one personality trait by the time they were in their 60s. When asked whether it's possible to change your personality, younger people predict they won't change, and older people report that they have changed quite a bit, something that has helped keep tattoo artists and divorce attorneys in business. In a 2014 TED Talk, psychologist Dan Gilbert said that human beings are works in progress who mistakenly think they're finished. The person you are right now is as transient, as fleeting, and as temporary as all the people that you've ever been. As long as we are living, we aren't finished. We are, and who we are is yet to be undecided. This day beckons us to be someone better than we have been, to actively choose and to create the person we want to be. Science and life have taught us unquestionably that we have the power to do that. So, what part of your personality do you want to change? What part do you need to change? What part of yourself is creating hardship or pain in your life? What part of your personality is blocking you from deeply connecting with others, from having fun, from feeling relaxed and enjoying the life? Is there a part of you that feels broken, needing, and wanting? And wouldn't it be nice to feel lighter, kinder, more whole and peaceful? It is possible. Today is about recognizing the personality traits that are hurting us and harming our most important relationships, and recognizing that we can change. We can be different. By way of slow, intentional, thoughtful actions and consistent practice, we can be better. Torah and rabbinic wisdom teach that we should consider and reflect on ourselves and strive to change. Maimonides' Mishneh Torah instructs us that we have to examine ourselves. The text says that a person might be born with certain natural tendencies towards one trait or another, or they may have acquired those tendencies through habit or environmental influences. Nevertheless, though, we have free will and the ability to direct ourselves into the right path and form the right character traits. The Rambam assures us that even ingrained traits like anger, selfishness, and apathy can be redirected by practice. The Talmud tells us that one of the greatest forms of teshuvah is becoming a different person than we were before, a radical reorientation of the self. It's not simply a matter of fixing our external actions, but of changing the very essence of who we are. Tractate Brachot says, whoever truly repents, their sins are forgiven and they are transformed as if they never existed. And in the place where penitents stand, even the righteous cannot stand. Transformation, changing our ways, changing the parts of our personality that lead us to err and sin is more powerful and more meritorious than never having erred. By engaging in work to change our personality, we move towards betterment. The prophet Ezekiel says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit into you. I will remove the heart of stone from your body and give you a heart of flesh. That new heart, it's not a gift from the outside. It's a result of our work in refining our character, our emotions, and our minds. It's a process of constant growth and elevation. Friends, our hearts of stone do not serve us well. Our stubbornness, our anger, our anxious rigidity, they lock out love and compassion, warmth and tenderness. They are cold and hard, atrophied from pain and injury and harshness. And our wisdom literature reminds us it doesn't have to be this way. Our biblical ancestors are exemplars of personality change and transformation. Jacob begins a deceiver, tricking his brother Esau and stealing his birthright. But through hardship, fleeing, wrestling, losing, reconciling, he becomes Israel, one who wrestles with God, and he matures into a father, a leader, a man transformed. Joseph begins as a vain, arrogant dreamer, taunting his brothers, but through betrayal, slavery, and prison, he becomes a wise leader, saving nations from famine, forgiving his brothers, and reuniting his family. King David begins as a humble shepherd, rises as a warrior, stumbles mightily as a sinner, and in his later years becomes the author of Psalms, our cherished poems of regret, longing, humility, and faith. Judaism doesn't imagine static, perfect heroes. Nope, it tells us of people who fall, who break, who grow, who fundamentally change their personalities and leave a rich, complex, and inspiring legacy. Studies suggest that around 90% of people want to change at least one of their personality traits. So if you're the other 10, you can leave at this point. One of the biggest obstacles to changing personality is ambivalence. It's a sense that, yeah, maybe it would be good to be less anxious or angry or shy or reactive, or to be more adventurous, playful, or organized. And maybe one day we will, but not today. We rationalize that things aren't so bad, and we decide that the discomfort or status quo that we are experiencing or causing is easier, less painful, or difficult than what we would have to overcome. Olga Kazan reminds us that personality change can be outrageously uncomfortable. At many points, personality change is going to feel like squeezing into a pair of too small tights or learning some obscure new language. You're going to feel timid and jittery, but that discount and discomfort doesn't mean you should rethink your desire to change. She goes on to explain that anxiety can be a sign that you're actually slipping the surly bonds of habit and truly becoming different. Virtually every voice in the world of self-transformation warns against quitting something because it just doesn't feel right. So, how do we change our personality? We can change our personality traits by behaving in ways that align with the kind of person we'd like to be. We can force ourselves to act the opposite of how we normally would. If you're shy, make conversation. If you're messy, start by making the bed. If you're overbearing, hold back. When we make intentional changes to our thinking, our feelings and our behaviors often follow. And as we maintain those changes over time, we're essentially shifting our personality. The most important part of this work is to be consciously and consistently adopting the behavior of the personality that you want. It is a case of fake it till you make it, except that there is nothing fake about wanting and working towards change. That change comes from a recognition that our natural ways and tendencies are making us miserable or creating pain and hardship in our lives. It is both that easy and that hard. Personality change is rooted not in what we want to do or say we'll do, but rather in doing things differently. Action first, then thoughts and feelings. In his Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle notes, we become builders by building and harpists by playing the harp. Similarly, it's by doing acts that are just that we become just, and doing temperate acts that we become temperate. By doing courageous acts, we become courageous. By performing acts of a different personality, we can change our own. In her transformational journey to change her personal life, Olga Kazan learned the powerful truth that even when things happen that we don't like, we can live in a way that we do like. We can change our lives even if nothing in our life changes. This is more than just us. The Lurianic Kabbalistic view of tikkun olam teaches that personal and collective efforts towards spiritual growth are seen as intertwined with cosmic restoration of the world. Every time we resist temptation, overcome a bad habit, and work to change our personality to be calmer, kinder, more organized, open, and creative, we're engaging in a form of tikkun olam, not just for ourselves, but for the cosmos. Every change we make reverberates and continues and contributes to the repair of the entire world. And the world desperately needs us. More than ever. The work starts with our own personal recognition and efforts to change. Our small transformations ripple outward into our family, community, and creation. we can really change. Not instantly, not easily, but deeply and truly. Yom Kippur is the day to say, I'm not finished. My story is not done. I can be more than I have been. Choose one change this year. Start small. Persist. Believe that it matters. And may our teshuvah and our change improve not only us, but the world.